Boom. All right, welcome back to another build vlog. Kind of surprising, I know. Oh, 1 second. Yeah. Oh boy, I can't put a shirt on, right? Yesterday I was wearing a work shirt, but I had a hoodie over it, so it didn't really matter. Today I'm not, so yeah, gotta fix that. So right about here, seems good. So this is vlog number 7, and we'll be taking a look at a couple different ideas today. So for the Monopoly board, a problem that I've been having is how do I roll dice without destroying the board? So randomly in my YouTube subscription, something really cool popped up, and it was this concept of a dice tower. So something long and tall that you can drop dice in, and they roll around and they clink around, and then they come out to randomize. So yesterday on stream, we built this kind of test prototype that I'll be using for D&D personally, and this is a book that now has ramps on the inside of it that will shoot out dice. So there's dice already on the inside of this. This is upside down. We're going to flip this over, and those dice are going to come out. So this is a really cool concept. I really like this because it is a book, so it's thematically themed really well. There's a little bit of storage down here. As you can see, an update since yesterday. I now have 2 yellow D12s, 2 orange D12s, and then 1 yellow D20, 1 orange D20. This is a 12. If I could get it out. That came with this giant set right here. And then at work, I kind of scrounged around and found a couple other 6-sided dice to, basically, this is a game that I play with the kids at work now. These actually came from a counting game where you're supposed to roll the D12, and then you're supposed to roll these and add the numbers together to get whatever number is on here. So some of these dice are actually modified. This one has 1 through 6 on it. That one has 1 through 6 on it, and this one has 1 through 6 on it. But these two actually only have 1, 2, and 3, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, so now I'll be turning this into a game for the kids. I know this isn't a more Monopoly board, but for those of you who would like a simple dice game to play with younger kids, the game that I tend to play with them is we move some of this stuff out the way so that this D12 fits back in here. The game that I play is kind of like Yahtzee. So basically you would set up your board, you would drop it, and then 6. So each round is worth a point, and the first person to get to whatever the round calls for. So let's say 3 of the same number. We'll count that as a 3. We'll count that as a 3. That's a 2. And we'll count that as a 3. So I got 3 3s, which means I get the point for that round, and then we move on to the next round, and so on. So something as simple as this could make that type of game really easy. For the Monopoly board, we're actually going to go through the planning stage of that right now, because I don't want it to do this. So the reason this book is so good, I'm going to flip it upside down so those dice stay inside, which is how those have been staying inside. the reason this works so good is because you put it into the top and it comes out on one side. For the Monopoly board, that wouldn't work unless the actual thing would be able to spin around in a circle. So if we draw something real quick here, we have our Monopoly board, and in the middle is going to be our dice tower. So if there was a Lazy Susan here, you'd be able to spin the tower on around as much as you wanted, and people would still be able to grab dice out of the tower. I don't want to put a Lazy Susan on the board because that's a little complex and I don't think it would be as fun. So my idea is to build a tower that kind of looks like a plus sign. So this is the bird's eye view looking top down. So the actual tower would be in the center here, and then down at the bottom of this tower is going to be a square pyramid in that shape, so that when the dice hit this point, they're not going to get stuck, hopefully, but they're going to choose that side, this side, that side, or that side to go out. So you have your four main cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. For those of you who have problems, remember that never eat soggy waffles. Super easy. Some other people might go the other way, but that's how I've always remembered it. So basically at the bottom of the tower is this square pyramid. The dice are going to come down this tower, they're going to hit the square pyramid, and they're going to come out in one of those four directions. And then you can kind of have like a mini game almost to kind of guess which chute it's going to come out of. So this is going to consist of two things. So number one, you have a dice tower, which is a pretty simple thing. I've already built one of those. Y'all just saw it in the book. And number two, you have a dice tray. So there's a couple of different ways to retain dice on an actual game board. So the simplest method is to have a dice tray, which is something as simple as just the lid of the box that you're playing with. It's literally just a box like this, and you roll the dice, and because there's walls to this box, it can't go anywhere on this box. So that's a dice tray. Now then, the dice tower is a little bit cool because I could make it tall. It has a lot more clinking around noise to it. It kind of fits the theme of Monopoly because if it's a tower, you can kind of model it after a skyscraper or the Mega Millionaire penthouse on top of it. Those types of things can be done with a big skyscraper tower in the middle of the board. So that's where this part comes in. And then the dice tray is going to be these things over to the side here. So as a general concept, let's start with a square pyramid. So we have a square pyramid down at the bottom of the tower. On the sides of that square pyramid, the flat sides that make up the square at the bottom of the pyramid, we're going to have the tower going up like so. And then it's going to come up here, and it's going to close off into a square. The same square that's at the bottom of the actual tower itself. So if we kind of draw some dashed lines here, kind of get a feel for where this back line is. Kind of like so. Now we have the tower. The dice are going to come down. They're going to hit the square pyramid's point, and they're going to choose one of four slots to go outside of. So the bottom of this tower is going to be opened right about here, so that the dice have the ability to come rolling out, like I said, in one of the four cardinal directions, like so. So that is the actual dice tower portion. Now then, to my understanding, with how dice have been working with the normal, the ramp version of the dice tower. Even with something like the big dice, right? Let's do it this way. Let's flip this over so they all come out. Let's say we have a normal 6-sided dice here, and we're gonna drop it face down with the 1 up. Now then, this dice is pretty big. It's almost got no room to actually move inside the tower. With ramps, something that I was worried about is that if we were to take and put this dice inside the tower with the 1 facing up, and we dropped it correctly, when it hit this ramp, it would slide, it would hit this wall, and it would keep going with the 1 facing up until it got out here, and then the 1 would still be facing up. So now then, I put that theory to the test yesterday. We're playing to the kids, and it turns out that isn't the case. Oftentimes, it will come out. So we'll put 6 up, and we got 5. So oftentimes, it will still change numbers, even if it's a ramp. So that was my one main concern with a ramp. So that said, the whole point was I don't have to put anything inside this tower to actually get the dice to randomize. By the time they hit this square pyramid down here at the bottom and they roll out into one of the dice trays, they should not be on whatever number was facing up when you dropped it down the tower. That said, I do want to try my hand at making a pegged tower as well. So the pegged tower is the other version of a dice tower. There's a couple different versions. The pegged and the ramp version are the more common ones. There's a couple other versions as well, but this is the ramp version. It's as simple as just having ramps and letting gravity do the work to drag the dice down. The pegged version, you would remove all the ramps and there would be just pegs all throughout the tower with enough room for the dice to actually come down the tower. It's a little bit more complicated and convoluted to build, which is why I started with a ramp tower to see exactly how it works. But it would be a lot of fun to build as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to doing pegs on the inside of this tower. So just imagine there would be a dowel rod or a peg, if you want to go that way. That would be here, and it would go all the way across over to there. So boom, now we have a dowel rod here. So when the dice come down the top of the tower here, they're going to bounce off of all these pegs, and then eventually they're going to hit the bottom. They're going to hit this square pyramid, and they're going to get kicked out into one of the dice trays, which would be all around the tower itself. So the cool thing is, all of that is nice and easy to figure out. The hard part is figuring out how to make this fold in a manner that would get it to fit on the board the way that it should and still work the way that I need it to, which is the hard part currently that I have not just yet figured out. So that was the whole point of this vlog, that we're trying to figure out how I would have a dice tray. So there's a couple of different ways that I've kind of thought about doing this. Every design that I've thought about involves the dice tray itself actually being able to fold up into the tower. The tower's maximum height could be basically the longest length of the board, which is 4 feet. Could be the longest. Now then, it would be slightly below 4 feet, so we're going to put the approximate symbol because the walls of the board are going to kind of come in just a little bit on the actual playing board itself. So my tower could be 3.5 feet tall worth of tower, which is pretty substantial. 3.5 feet is 3 times 12, 36, plus 6 is 42. So that'd be 42 inches. 42 inches is a huge, monstrous tower. I don't think a lot of people would be able to actually reach and put the dice into the tower when they do stuff like that. But it would be super cool because your dice would take forever to clink around and drop down and stuff like that. So it'd be super fun. So I think overall a good height would be 24 inches, which is in turn 2 feet. I think that's where I would settle on because it's a good height. That's somewhere right about there on the board. Sticking up, that gives plenty of room for dowel rods to be added to the actual board itself and to help clink the dice on around and not get them stuck and things like that. And then for the dice tray can be as long as the center of the board so that they're just touching the edge of the board all around the center. And then the cool thing about doing the plus pattern, as we're showing here, is that this box, this box, this box, this box are all open, and that's where on most Monopoly boards there's cards at. So that would be really helpful to retain the card spots here on the actual board itself, and those would not be touched by the dice at all, so they wouldn't get they wouldn't get messed up by the dice. The dice trays themselves are walled in all around here. So the dice don't come spilling out onto the board this way, this way, this way, or this way. So they don't hit any of the homes down here, here, or here, or here. They don't hit any players, hotels, skyscrapers. They don't knock it over any of that. And then for something this nice, I'm planning on probably doing a felt lining on the inside of this to make sure that the dice don't kind of vibrate the board too much. And for this dice tray, I think it would be possible to actually make it in all of one piece that might fit on the inside of the board. So I was thinking about doing like a folding, but if I do a 4-wall dice tray, man, that was bad. This side and this side are bad. Sorry about that. If I do a 4-wall dice tray, and they have their own base down here, and I build up the walls, I put the felt on the inside of it, and then I leave it. What I could do then is take the tower out and just sit the tower in right here in the middle, and that would make my 4 dice trays over here, and it would still be stowable the way that I want to. So would that be possible? All depends on how big the actual board itself is. So if we're going to go ahead and go back to my room, and we're going to take a look at the board itself. And hopefully everything that I just did was in camera, because if it's not, that's going to really suck. Alright, so the board has been sitting in my room since Thanksgiving, because we had people over for Thanksgiving, and you know, it's kind of bad to have it just out in the open. So the dice tray, oh boy, almost fell. The entire size of the dice tray is dependent on this spot right here. And the reason for that is it's quite clear, because you only want the dice tray to come out to this end. So we want to probably go to here to give enough room for the cards up here and down here. So once the dice tray comes in here, we need a tape measure, which we have. So 1 second. A whole bunch of stuff up there. Alright, so if we come in and we measure this side here, that will be the whole square, because this is a square. So we're going to do that real quick. So we're at 13 inches and 5/8, which I should write somewhere. 13 and 5/8, right there. So that's the whole square dimension right there. So in order for us to be able to fit what I'm talking about on the inside of this board, from here to here and from here to there would have to be 13 and 5/8 inches, which I believe it is, simply because I'm telling you it is. It's 4 foot by 2 foot. So if we come in and we measure off a square somewhere, if I can get my phone to stand up, if I put this here, stand. So if I can scoot you all down here. Alright, good enough. So we would need, we have a wall of the board here, we got a wall up here and a wall over here. So if we come in just a little bit, we've got, so if we even come in off the board for the wall here, 13 and 5/8 is right about there. So we got plenty of room here. 13 and 5/8 is right about there. So we got plenty of room there as well. So we would be able to do the actual dice tower for the, okay, so yeah, that's great. Okay, so now the actual height of the walls is what we are kind of limited to. So if we come in and start this planning segment again, it's really not a vlog if I do a lot of measurements, is it? All right, so we have 13 and 5/8 square is the middle of the board. And hopefully y'all can see that relatively well. So that's the middle of the board, is 13 and 5/8. So now the actual height of the walls would have to be smaller than the height of the actual surrounding board itself. So in order for us to figure that out, I would have to know how big the actual walls themselves are. And I don't know just yet how big the actual walls themselves are going to necessarily be. Yeah. Let's go ahead and end the vlog there. I think is a good place to stop. I've got to go back to work here in a couple seconds anyways, so I've made progress. I now know how I'm going to do my dice tray plus tower. It's going to be a combination of the two. The tower is just going to be sitting inside here. It's not actually going to be connected. I want it to be connected, but I think it's a good idea to do a dice tower and dice tray, and then just in case you're playing with little ones who might not necessarily be able to drop down the tower, you'd be able to take the tower off and just use the dice tray if you have to, which is helpful for all of them. So that is cool. I'm glad that I figured out how to do that now. That said, like I said, I'm going to end it off here, and I'm going to head back on off to work. So thank you guys so much for watching. Our building vlog number 7 of the Monopoly board is a lot longer than my other building vlogs, and I apologize for that.